The Knowledge Valorisation platform connects players in Europe with ambition.
Hello there! Do you also find that the research results are slow to reach the market? Should benefit citizens better? Should we turn into more solutions to tackle climate change and other challenges? The EU Knowledge Valorisation platform is there to change that. Have a look and exchange with like-minded people across Europe to make it happen. Share your best example of a valorization practice and get visibility. Be inspired by what others are doing. Join a community to tackle specific issues. Find advice and guidelines. Take part in workshops and events like the EU Knowledge Valorisation Week. Keep up with latest developments and background studies. There is much for you to discover on the EU Knowledge Valorisation platform. Join us!
Hello and welcome to this panel discussion. My name is Joanna Drake. I'm the Deputy Director General of DG Research and Innovation. So, welcome to the policy panel. It's been a full week of very inspiring and very concrete examples from across the Union on how to accelerate knowledge valorization and create more value for our R&I investments. It is without a doubt that these 3 days have confirmed the strong commitments by the stakeholder community to take forward the Council recommendation on the guiding principles for knowledge valorization and to put into place new and more practices facilitating the creation of social and economic value from knowledge that will benefit our citizens and our industries. The rich programme of the EU Knowledge Valorisation Week showcased from the 7 areas of the guiding principles with the 24 recommendations is the EU 24/7 firm commitment to deliver more value from the knowledge generated through R&I investments. This year, the week was organised in themed days devoted to sustainability, management of intellectual assets, and finally, industry science cooperation, comprising different formats and covering all knowledge valorization channels. Just to have a look at the first day, this highlighted the importance to act now and the need to have more science and technology breakthroughs to overcome climate change related challenges and make the transition to the green economy. Knowledge valorization plays indeed a key role here by connecting all the actors and accelerating the uptake, the convening power, we can say. The second day, it also celebrated the International Intellectual Property Day, which started with the presentation of the new Commission recommendation on the Code of Practice for Intellectual Asset Management, which was largely welcomed by the Member States and stakeholders as it complements their own practices. The sessions showcased how important it is to manage knowledge assets and ensure that all R&I actors have sufficient skills to create value through market, policy and societal uptake. So here we are now. Today is the last day of the event. And we started by putting under the spotlight the new Commission recommendation on a code of practice for standardization, aiming to bring the R&I community closer to standardization in the Union. Furthermore, we heard that business-science cooperation is key for regional innovation and how much important knowledge is when forming strategic partnerships. These interesting results of the various discussions are providing us a good starting point for this closing policy panel as to what are the challenges, the incentives, and the right models for further implementation. But I think I have said enough, and I would now like to open the floor to a very interesting panelists that we have with us, and I will ask them a series of questions because this will be very much helping us to understand further what is at stake and what needs to be done. So, without further ado, here you can see the panelists that we have, and I'd like to introduce them. We have Tana Halova-Perglova. She's the Director of Cross-Cutting and International Affairs Technology Agency of the Czech Republic. Welcome, Tana. We also have Fernando Villarino, who's Associate Director at the Computer Vision Center and former Associate Professor at the Department of Computer Science, UAB in Barcelona, and the former Chairperson of the European Network of the Living Labs. So hello, Fernando.
Pleasure.
And finally, but certainly not least, Lisa Lang, who's an entrepreneur and technologist, Director Policy and EU Affairs, Orchestrator, EIT, Climate Kick. So there you have it. We have a first round of questions to all the panelists. I would invite you to limit your, because of interest of time, of course, to 3 minutes to your replies. And just to start the mindset behind the questions in general, the guiding principles for knowledge valorization as a council recommendation where member states have agreed to intensify knowledge valorization and also accelerate uptake of research results. How could you support its implementation in your own context? What does it mean to you, and how can it help you in your everyday activities? I turn to Tana first, and I ask you very specifically, the Czech presidency, and indeed you personally, you helped the most in the adoption of the guiding principles of knowledge valorization as a council recommendation. The question is, which principles do you choose first to help you support national policies?
So first of all, I would like to say that those guiding principles are very, very important for us and the Council recommendation. And what is very important, actually, that it was agreed on the European level. Unanimously, it was approved by all member states. And it gives us some kind of power also on the national level to react and to implement this recommendation. Now, what we chose on the national level. I work in a research funding organization. So for us, the most natural it is to put it in some of our programs, in some of our calls. So we are now preparing calls for research organization, which is specifically for their IP management and IP portfolio. So we are now started the talks inside the agency, how we can implement the council recommendation into the program so that it is implemented on the level of research organizations in the projects. What I would also like to say that we have a quite important budget from structural funds, and we will use it, not our agency, but the Ministry of Education. They will use it to introduce strategic change in research organizations. This call will have a budget of 40 million euros, which is quite important. And it is for strategic changes in research organizations. So we are also dealing now with the ministry, how we can better formulate this call so that the research organizations put those principles in all their internal documents. Now, of course, the big challenge will be to have enough people to help the universities, research organizations to understand how to implement it so that it's efficient and so that it really has the impact not only on the market but also on the society, and that we have impact on the challenges that we are facing, because this is the aim that what we want.
Just a little supplementary question. How do you intend to monitor this in the implementation?
This is going to be a big issue. We already did something in the past, and we try to monitor the process in the research organizations. But I suppose that now we shall be some kind of stricter. We shall be more strict when we will monitor the process. But here I see really the lack of skills on our level. So we have to also train ourselves how to better explain it so that the research organizations understand it and are able to really implement it.
Thank you very much, Tana. I wish you luck for that.
Yeah, thank you. We will need it.
And then now to Fernando, if I may. What is the role of knowledge in the R&I ecosystem on which you are working, and how can you maximize the value of the knowledge in the living labs?
Good. My area of expertise in the last years has been artificial intelligence. So we are in the Computer Vision Center, and we teach computers to see in the way of human beings see and understand our life. So if we have been reading the papers during the last weeks and months, this has been, let's say, an explosion of new technologies, new applications with serious concerns that are creating a lot of tension. So my perspective as a scientist and as an innovation manager, let's say, is to try to approach this transition that is going to happen anyway in the safest way. And the approach that the Living Lab community is doing, particularly in Enol, I've been working for years now, is by allowing spaces in which, beyond the regulatory framework that we are defining, we can have the experience. We can have the citizens being part of the processes that are being developed, so that they can also provide not only their opinion, but have an actual impact in defining what is acceptable and what is not. I can give you, for example, one example in these seconds that I have left.
You can be concrete with that example.
Yes, for instance, we have been working in a program in our Computer Vision Center in order to take out our researchers from the Ivory Tower, which is the university, and we have been working together with a network of more than 230 public libraries in the province in Barcelona. And all these public libraries are being hubs in which our demos and our face recognition, or also medical imaging, or AI generating systems are approached to the citizens in order to identify potential futures which could or could not be acceptable. I think that the role that we are having here, and in order to develop the test before invest approach that we are having also for the digital innovation hubs, is to explore these real life settings in order to clearly give a yes or a no go if this is not acceptable. And I think that this is a very tough job to do, but really passionate about being able to develop that with a higher value.
Well, I mean, I would agree. You know, this is a really important phase of the development or evolution of AI, because it's becoming more and more reality. But I think there is less comfort in people's minds as to, you know, how far does it go? How far is this going to be really, you know, like intervening in our lives and taking over maybe? So I think a level of comfort, a level of what is acceptable and not, I think is really, I really look forward to the results that you will produce for your labs. I turn to Lisa. And Lisa, I'd like to make a reference to an interesting study on knowledge valorization through arts and culture that we have recently published. You yourself are an active entrepreneur in the creative industries. My question to you is, how can we use art and culture to boost knowledge valorization?
Thank you very much. I think the best way is like the acknowledgement that arts and culture can be our catalysts towards climate neutrality and saving Mother Earth, is because all of the programs, what we in theory on high research level with a lot of money, is what I hear in the rooms, especially through my work with Climate Kick, is, but how do we move people? How do we move and change behavior?
Behavior. Yeah.
And the answer for that, it's emotional, and it's through culture. So we are sitting on cities, on regional level, on national level. We do have all of these resources, but we have to acknowledge them and we have to let them in. So this is why with Climate Kick, and also like our CEO Kirsten Dunlop, because we both have an art background, but we are climate quitters. So we're like, okay, we have to go into the system to change the system, and we work with systemic change. There is a new rise of arts and culture, because they now have been acknowledged as a official industrial ecosystem. So this is a resource, and it's an utter powerful resource. But we have to build bridges, because we're talking about an industry with so much power, which we have to bring into a system, in a policy system, which hasn't been built to work with arts and culture on a policy level. And I think also especially is like what Industry 5.0 is talking about is, and I want to point out how historic that is like that it acknowledges the human factor. So for such a long time, we've done research in theory, we've done technology, and treated technology as a solution, but technology is simply just a tool, because you can't have an emotional connection with a button. But like what you can activate, you can do. So what we mechanically, through Climate Kick, we have partnered up with the Culture Creative Kick, the knowledge innovation community. So we are like the innovation implementation agency on European level, and we walk the talk. Fierce collaborations, building bridges, and we have to bring the industries in. Culture creative industry counts for 5.5% of the European GDP. This is more than the tech industry. So, but we have to bring them in. And I just came from a workshop with Cenotypes Consortium, which is the flagship program for Erasmus+. And I just said, like, look, I know it's like all of those words sound very theoretical. It feels like you get a new suit and it doesn't fit. We have to get over it. We are here to help. We are here to explain. We've been around in Brussels for a very long time. And now we have to build bridges and bring them in. So that means very concretely, on like cities levels, for instance, that you see museums, theaters, art galleries, they are mitigation and adaptation centers. That's where you have knowledge, that's where you have learning services. The community centers, the cultural community centers which we have, look around you, you have all of the resources. We have to build bridges within our universities where we have the science and the art faculties far more closer together. I have both degrees, so like it was a very long distance in between on the campus. So, but like, we have to bring them all together.
Thank you very much for that, Lisa. And I'd now like to start the second round of questions. And in fact, I'm going to turn to you, Fernando, because Lisa has just mentioned the importance of the emotional, building the bridge to the emotions of people. And I cannot agree with her more. I'm going to ask you, how would you recommend to bring citizens closer to researchers and innovators and engage them into what is, in fact, a common societal need?
Mm-hmm. I love the question, and I was listening you linking arts and climate and making bridges, right? So I think that we are definitely moving towards the idea that if we are having to solve the problems together, we have to probably bring a transnational dimension, a multidisciplinary dimension and transdisciplinary dimension to our research and our university. So, Trana, what you were saying and the work that you are doing, and I think that I'm really looking forward to know the results, because it's very much needed. I usually explain regarding what this emotional part, right? There are a number of basic principles for citizen engagement, right? But it has to be personal. There has to be something on me, something to me on it. Otherwise, it will not happen, right? Then every action that you ask for has to be simple, because if it is very complex to do, no one will engage. And it also has to be practical. I have to have an outcome and see the outcome what it's having. So it has to have visibility. And if we are not having these principles, then we cannot, for instance, identify what happens when you lower down the temperature of your house, and then you have less pollution into the atmosphere of the city, and then your health is improving and you can measure. You were asking afterwards how to measure this impact. So I think that this, for me, and again, in this link, in this approach to how to develop and how to implement it, it is crucial. Just to identify these actions, for me, the real life settings are essential, and also to be explicit in the experimentation. Because one of the problems I think that we are having as citizens is that we are not aware about the social experiments that are being around with all the data that we are having, right? And we have to be explicit. But it is not a problem. We have to be explicit that we are in a transition. And this transition is based on the human transformation provided by internet. Mm-hmm. And it is not based on just a new industrial revolution. If we get in Spanish we say to get the bull by the horns, right? And we do that, right? I think that it will not be other option than making culture collaborating with the health, the climate kick, and to have this transnational citizen science could be also a good instrument in order to make awareness, impact, understanding, and the link from science to innovation. Right? This point is not always clear for us as citizens, right? And I think that we have to work together, not only in the universities, but together with the big companies and SMEs as well.
Thank you very much, Fernando. I mean, I look forward really to this clarity as well, apart from the awareness, because there's a lot of it. But I think at granular level, the citizens still link the personal engagement link somehow. So I think we need to also be, take into account the various needs maybe and the various desires and maybe the various fears that are surrounding these challenges and these transitions that we're talking about. Affordability, for instance, is another one. And so I think, that is really where the personal engagement becomes real. And also some practical tips, very simple practical tips of behavior change and of how, our lives will be affected or better or worse, hopefully better, with the transitions. Lisa, I turn again to you. In your opinion, do entrepreneurs and innovators pay enough attention to their intellectual assets and their management? How would you advise them, also in the context of the kick climate, to build an effective strategy for the management of intellectual assets generated from their activities? So do you think they actually pay enough attention, and how would you advise them if they don't?
I think it's also because, having lived the life of an entrepreneur, which very much feels like you jumped off a cliff and you have to stitch the parachute while you're falling. And it feels like that you have to do like everything, because especially when you're in innovation, there are no handbooks, there are no guiding principles, and there is no policy. So you feel like while you're scrapping all of your euros together and try to motivate everyone and being okay with that everybody says no all the time, and then also you have to tell the higher decision makings this is innovation for real. So I just wanted to acknowledge that this is for the entrepreneurs, this is a lot, and the way how we can support them is that the accessibility to support, just making it far more pragmatic, because I started as an entrepreneur and I ended up in Brussels, so it's a journey. And I actually started that especially through research on policy for new standards, but also for property, for intellectual property. The thing is that I think especially in Europe, we should see our intellectual property also as a part of heritage. And heritage very much comes from craft. And that also implies that we use old technology, old hyphenated technology with new technology. So for entrepreneurs, it's this is not only about crushing the glass ceiling and ignore everything what has been done before, because there is so much already. So the best way is just very sustainable. Look at the resources which are there, understand the principles, and then work on top, not from scratch. And I think especially on a European level, it's like that our identity and the heritage is very much concentrated in intellectual property. And that is a good start. But like the thing is, and I know like I'm, surrounded by researchers, but sorry, but like it also makes it like really rigid. And we need flexibility, especially for innovation, especially when we bring communities together. Yes, I know this is about how to monitor, because we are spending taxpayers' money, and it's about trust. But like if we look how innovation is done, how speed and impact is done, it's like there has to be a room of flexibility. And I think is that especially in Europe, it's like I think we can do a lot, but flexibility is a little bit of a word which is like on the lower of the list of like our capabilities. I don't know if I'm gonna get in trouble if you ever like return me back. But the thing is like in arts and culture, for instance, to give you a concrete example. Very, very difficult is always like, where does inspiration start and stop, and when does copy start and stop? And we still really haven't figured that out. And one of the opportunities is like digital trackability, traceability. We have a huge issue with, or like opportunity also with NFTs. But then also about like, especially for designers, and my heart goes out to product designers, jewelry designers, to fashion designers. When you put a lot of your efforts in, how can we on European level support you that your creative ideas created in Europe get blatantly copied from other brands and from other platforms, and that is like where entrepreneurs really feel lonely. It's like, hey, we feel like we are doing all of the work on the front line, we get shot all the time. And you're sitting in the cozy cubicles and do a lot of paper, but how can you join our front line? And I think also like welcoming and challenging my colleagues here is that we need to acknowledge it, and we need to talk about it, how we can very pragmatically bring it together. Guidelines are nice, but we are in a time of action.
How can they not feel lonely?
I think it's like seriously is on the one side is invite them. Like not only I should sit here. I think it's very much about that. I mean, like we have the SME assembly, which is fantastic, but it's invite only. It's that, like for instance, we don't have an SME envoy. Like we never, for a very long time, we've been promised to have an SME envoy. We have a huge rise of sustainable startups. I mean, like at Climate Kick, we are running like the biggest green tech accelerator. And there's so much resources there, and it feels like sometimes we as the entrepreneurs, we don't get heard, considering that SMEs are like 95-97% of our economic backbone, and it feels very much like that we are not heard and seen. So you can do this by invite them in. In every events you have, you should have a entrepreneur from different, and also very much so please from culture creative industries, but not only. Acknowledge them that they're there, because they will go back into their community and said like, I was in Brussels and it wasn't that bad. Invited me and I've learned so much. So it's like it's emotional. It's like now where we engage with people, invite them in the universities, invite them to be guest lecturers, right? And then of course also money, uncomplicated money. We have the US with the Inflation Pact, which now just like, which is a green transition money disposal under disguise. Where is that here in Europe? Like, if you're really innovative and don't want to do touch up, you need financial and structural support. That's where the policy part of it is. Like, so 3 things: acknowledgement, invite them to the party. Number 2, access to uncomplicated money, which of course has to be monitored and traced. And number 3, policy. because real innovation always is outside policy, because policy always feels like we do rules after the thought. But we actually need a policy for the future which allows us to go across sector mechanically, so we have to fight less and like work with you.
Thank you very much for that. Very passionate appeals. I turn now to Tana with a question about using your experience. How can we help improve entrepreneurial skills development, and how early should it start? And how can we train our researchers without disrupting the research activities? Quite a mouthful there, but I'm sure you have something to say, like Lana did as well, like Lisa did as well, on SMEs and her 3 recommendations, shall we say.
I think that we are all aware that we should start as early as possible, at least with some aspects, with some questions that we will ask our children, that we will make them think to ask when they are doing anything. I think it starts at early age, and we must encourage them in their innovation process in anything that they want to do and they are willing to do. Because if we stop them because there are barriers, like there are laws or something, they will lose this drive and this interest to do something new. So I think this is the first part. The second part about the researchers, sometimes I had the impression, maybe it's only from the national level, but that we want to transform our researchers into entrepreneurs, which is, of course, they are afraid of this, because they do research because they want to do research, they want to see some kind of impact of their research, but sometimes they just don't know how to ask good questions so that their research really brings something. And I think that we shall teach them this skill, to ask good questions, but we shall not try to transform all the researchers into entrepreneurs, but build teams around them which will help them in this, but which will also help them to ask the good questions. And I'm back at the beginning, that it starts in the early age, so that when you want to be researcher, you know already that what kind of questions you shall ask, so that the market, the society wants your product. Meaning not only, and we had a very interesting session about this at our Knowledge Valorisation event in Prague last week, where it was exactly this was explained by one of the speakers, that we shall teach them to involve people in their research, to give them the direction. So this is the thing that, and it's a big challenge actually. We shall start at the beginning, it will be hard. And now I think that we do not have enough people to be able to explain this. So we will first have to teach the teachers actually to do it, and it will be a very long journey.
Still as well, there's nothing wrong that researchers actually, or part of the researchers, evolve into an entrepreneur. I mean, and not abandon research completely, but become much more driven by entrepreneurship as such.
No, it's absolutely fine, but I mean, not everybody is comfortable with this. Not all the researchers.
No, absolutely.
There are researchers who want to do the research, see the impact, but they do not want to deal with financial things, with creation of companies and so on. So that's why they need some kind of team which has the skills, and somebody who can uptake their results and really push it forward.
Thank you so much for all of you. In the meantime, of course, we've had Slido, and I will read some of the questions or comments that are up on the screen. You can also have a look. I'll read them out. So, guiding principles are nice initiatives, but how do you make it happen on the field? Yeah, maybe Lisa has a lot to say about that, I think. If citizens are in the driving seat, who should be the co-pilot? Maybe, the system, the infrastructure maybe could help, but a lot more, I think, there. In this R&I ecosystem where co-creation is key, how do you break the silos? Perennial question. can knowledge valorization be used to tackle inequalities? Can it help with spreading technologies and innovative solutions more broadly? And I wonder, I'll turn to you before going to the final questions. We do have a bit of time. One of you, Fernando, for instance, which one would you like to answer briefly? Which one you feel a real drive that you want to say something about?
Well, I think I go for the first one because it's very interesting. And when Lisa was explaining that for us an entrepreneur, it's just like falling into after the cliff, right? And you know where to land. It is okay. You were describing my work with a PhD, right? You're my PhD. And afterwards, for the consolidation of my position, and afterwards, in order to create. So basically, we're in the same business, right? And this is something that it is in these years. The university is not the university of the 19th century. And it is not anymore the university of the 20th century, for many reasons. For instance, in my field, when we are publishing papers in big computer vision conferences or artificial intelligence conference, those who are leading and who are presenting there are the companies. They are these Googles and these NVIDIAs and these Intel, and also universities are publishing, but now it has become a little bit the place where the talent is, right? And for instance, for us, talking about the valorization of what we are creating, we have developed also these joint labs in which the companies are paying not for contracted research, but for research itself, so that we can have a joint team in order to create papers. And this was never happening until very recently. And we have a number of examples in autonomous mobility, also in sustainability, etc. So things are moving very, very much because it is there is this tension between having a patent and protect our knowledge, right, and go to develop it because things go very, very, very fast. And being the first one watching it is as important as being the one who is driving the protection of that, right? So this changed completely in the last years, and with the internet, this definitely occurred. And I will say another thing in the conference that we are going to have in September for the Open Living Lab Days in Barcelona. We're exactly going to speak about what happens if the transitions go well. Because all we're having is feedback about what could happen if we are not doing correctly, right? But we need a roadmap. We're having also a roadmap for all the actions we're going. Do we have this roadmap really? Do we have an actual roadmap of what happens if the transitions are going well? Which is the kind of society and human beings that we are having there? I think that this is essential. And if I would like to touch a bone and finish with this, probably from our European perspective, we definitely have to understand which is the kind of innovation ecosystem that we are having, right? Touching bone, eh? And because by the end of the day, we definitely need this European approach to it, right? And we were sharing before precious examples about joining efforts, right? And having transnational teams, no? So I think that this is key, and we have to probably advance in that in order to advance from European ecosystems, regional ecosystems, to one strong approach and this is a differentiated approach, right? To not to compete, but to create this European way. This would be my how to do it, right?
Thank you, Fernando. Tana, would you like to comment on any one of the...
May I just maybe follow what you said, but from the policy perspective, actually on the first one, how to make it happen on the field. I think that some people, when they read the recommendation or the codes, they have impression that it is a lot of theory. But when you show them concrete examples, suddenly it matches together and they see they can react and imagine much more actually to be done. So I think that one of the ways to do is really to bring concrete examples and build on them, which does not mean take it from other country and implement it in your country, but which means really to start like this by the example, and we can find in any country, we can find example of which you have actually in the council recommendation.
Sana, I don't know whether you'd like to have a look, quick look, and see whether you'd like to comment about anything. But there's another question that has come up. Are there practices or lessons in knowledge valorization from other continents or countries which you would like to import into Europe?
Actually, I can say only for. I'm sure that they are. I'm sure that there are many of them, because we can have some inspirations either from United States or from other countries, or from Israel, which is quite good in the management of intellectual assets. And we very often we have missions to go there and even to learn from their agencies how they manage their projects and how they monitor them. This is something that is very important for Israel, the monitoring of their companies that they support, so that they can see the impact on the society and on the market. So this is those would be the examples, but I think that we have also plenty of them really in Europe, and we must dig a bit more. And I'm very happy that we have this knowledge valorization platform where we have concrete examples, and that we have one of the principles is the peer learning, which is for us
it can be enhanced a lot more, I think. Lisa, I would now turn to you and have a quick look at maybe any one of these you'd like to comment on in a short way, because we need to go very soon now to the final question. I'm going to a final challenge I'll put to you.
I would like to address the question about breaking the silos, because if I would have a T-shirt, then it's like break the silos, because it's very mechanical. So the thing is, like, how to break the silos is like look at the resources which are already there. We at Climate Kick, we are the consortium leader for one of the EU missions, Net Zero Cities. Go there, have a look. Is your city in that? Our issue is like we are too successful. We had far too many cities applying, and we just can support 112 at the moment. But like, look where is your closest cities. Go into these programs, have a look. Even though it's not applying to your industry, but like knowing that there is something happening, go there. Don't wait for that there is something not customized or that you don't get an invitation letter. We don't have the time, okay? Go see where the resources in, show up to the events, educate yourself. And then the other part of it is like, and then build bridges. So like, the thing is like what we've been doing with like climate change communities and creative industries. The question was like, what should we do with the artists? And the artists were like, but we are not in policy, and like, you know, how can we save the world? And it's actually like, I can tell you from experience, it's the way how you build bridges, you do that with people. Like, I've spent a lot of time in the climate community and with arts and culture and in research and in digital. And I just started to talk with people. And then you just like find somebody, you know that in universities as well, you just find somebody where you have the feeling they might be open for doing things a little bit differently. And then you spend time over there, and then eventually you just bring them together, very helpful at a party with good food, or in some other very welcoming casual conversation. But like, especially in like in international diplomacy, that's really how it's done, is like acknowledge the emotion and be empathetic, that you work with different systems, and then learn how it works, what kind of words we are using, because that's also something, right? It's like,
I need to ask you to conclude, because I'm going to ask you the last challenge, the three of you, and you have very, very limited time now. So my challenge to you is one concrete idea of implementation for the guiding principles for knowledge valorization, which would be a game changer for accelerating the uptake of research results. You were supposed to have 1 minute, but you're going to have 30 seconds now. So maybe Fernando would like to start.
Well,
So one concrete idea, how could you put it in concrete practice, but an idea that could be a game changer to accelerate the uptake of research results?
good. So 30 seconds. But I will try then to put a very big challenge, which is going to the word valorization to understand which is the value that is created from the knowledge. It's only economic value, or there are other types of values that are arising from that. Transformative values, the possibility of changing the way in which we are living our lives. And for that, it could be useful to have these test beds or sandboxes or living labs in which we are having these experiences, right, in order to definitely implement or identify what are the values that we're having there.
Okay, thank you very much. Lisa.
Can I hand over? I need to think about it.
Okay, Tana.
Yeah, for me, it's definitely skills and train people so that they are able actually to explain the knowledge valorization, the shift from technology transfer to knowledge valorization, so that they are able to spread this idea with concrete examples, and they are able really to do the change on their institutional level.
Have you thought about it, Lisa?
Yeah. I will answer with a story in the context of the European presidency. I was just in Sweden.
Very short.
And transition. There is an existing technology in collecting PET bottles, and the Lund University is transforming it into the textile industry for trackability, traceability. So it's about like there's a system over there, move it over there and implement it.
Thank you very much. I hope that has been an inspiration. First of all, the discussion itself. Thank you so much for your knowledge, for your experiences, for sharing it with us, and also for being challenged, on something that is not easy to come up with in terms of ideas. I also want to thank the audience for their participation and also for their interest. Thank you so much also for your questions. I hope that we have satisfied you with, at least partially, with the comments and the observations. I thank the speakers, and I would now like to close the session and remind you that tomorrow there's be a management training day on intellectual asset management. Thank you so much, and good afternoon.
Thank you, Joanna.